experiment with some of the latest software and devices. We want to make these tools accessible to all OSU students and provide opportunities for students to develop proficiency and comfort with the kinds of technology that they will need to be successful at OSU and beyond. Last month we learned about how to use multiple Adobe programs together to make a single project. If you've missed one of our programs or simply need a refresher, you can find them on ostate.tv, and they can also be found on the library website by searching for Tech Tuesday. Today's program is all about HTML, the coding language that serves as the foundation for all of your favorite websites. So here to introduce us to the world of HTML is our own head of maps and spatial data, Kevin Dykes. We'll take questions from the audience afterwards, and if you're watching outside today's live stream, you can submit questions on Twitter using the hashtag #LibTechTues. At the end of the program, we'll be drawing for prizes, including today's grand prize, which is a Chromebook. And if you are an OSU student here with us, be sure to fill out an entry prize form. If you haven't already done so, a member of our friendly staff can assist you. And so without further ado, here is Kevin Dyke.
Thank you. Well, thanks everyone for joining me. Apologies for the fact that I sound close to death. I'm not quite there. I think we'll make it. So we might make things slightly abbreviated today, but I think we'll still learn a lot and have a chance to talk a bit about some HTML. I want to keep things pretty close to the ground in a couple ways today. By that I mean I want to keep it basic, so I'm not making any assumptions in terms of what anyone knows, but I also want to make it so that you actually look at the content of HTML itself. So we're not going to be playing with Adobe Dreamweaver or any of the Wix or Weebly or any sort of like the website makers that are out there that you might be familiar with. What we're going to look at today is how do you actually write that code, that HTML itself, and how can you use that in something like your WordPress site, or when you want to customize something like a Weebly site, how can you get at the source and work with that? So if you want to follow along, I would be happy to have you. And what we're going to use is a website called CodePen. And so if you want to fire up your favorite web browser, either Chrome or Firefox should work just splendidly, and then go to codepen.io and hit enter. That'll take you to something like this. I'm going to go into full screen to maximize our real estate, and then I want you to click on pen over here in the top left under the create tab. Once you've clicked create, you'll see something like this. Your screen will look a little different from mine, and that's okay. And here you can see, you can click and drag. I'm going to minimize this tab that says JS because we're not going to get into JavaScript at all today. That's the programming language that sort of drives all of the interactivity you've ever seen on the web. So when you click a button, when you look at Google Maps and you drag and zoom around and view a map or something like that, that's all done with JavaScript. We're not going to get into that because it's its whole own different learning path. What I want to talk about is, for the most part, HTML, and then we'll talk just a little bit about CSS, which stands for Cascading Style Sheets. And CSS is what's used to style. It's used to make the web look like how it looks and feels to us today. I like to use an analogy when I'm talking about these three underlying components of the web, where HTML, if you think about the World Wide Web as a house, or a website as a house, And the HTML, you can think of it as the framing, the infrastructure. It's the ceiling joists. It's the wall studs. That the HTML provides that structure to your house. The CSS provides the style. So that's like, well, what color paint do you want to put? What style of light fixture do you need to put in there? Do you do stainless steel in the kitchen? All that sort of stuff. You decide that using cascading style sheets. And then once you have your fixtures and colors and structure in place, you need to incorporate interactivity using JavaScript. And so I think of that sort of like how electricity and plumbing within a house, that's what the purpose served by JavaScript. You can't see it, but you would really know if it's not working properly because things are going to be going wrong inside your house. But so for today, we're going to talk about the structure and a little bit about the style of a website using HTML and just a hint of CSS. So in our code pen, we'll be typing in these top two boxes here where you see the gray, and then in the bottom, that's where you'll see the results of what we type in. So if you want to just type along with me as I go, that's fine. If you don't want to, that's fine too. If you just want to, once we get going a little bit, you want to take off by yourself and just kind of putz around, that's totally fine. That's what I always end up doing in these sorts of things, so I won't be offended whatsoever. So the first thing we want to put in, and I'm going to be talking a lot about angle brackets. So you know angle brackets look like greater than and less than signs. So I'm just going to call those brackets. Just to speed things up today, I don't want to say angle brackets over and over and over, and we're going to be using a whole lot of angle brackets. So we're going to call them brackets. So within a couple of brackets, I'm going to type in HTML, and that's called an opening tag. And so you have, in HTML, you have things called elements, and elements can contain other elements, and elements can contain text, and they contain all of your content. So any website consists of at least one HTML element, and that is the HTML element. So there you see I opened it, and now I'm going to close it, and the way you close it is an angle bracket, and then a /, and then the same name of the tag, which in this case is HTML. So angle bracket, HTML, angle bracket, and then to close it, angle bracket, / HTML, angle bracket. Very scintillating stuff. As you can see, we don't have anything to show for it, but the whole point of HTML, which is hypertext markup language, it's that you mark up text. We make it so that a computer will take the text that it receives as the representation of a website as it shoots around the internet. Every aspect of the internet that's transported around is, for the most part, text. And the way that text gets interpreted is based on how it's marked up. And so that's what HTML means, and we'll get a little more into what markup actually means later on. So for now, we've got our HTML tag, and we've closed it, and that's great. So now everything we do will be within this HTML tag. And you'll notice I'm going to be working on separate lines and keeping things separate. And that's only for me. That's for my eyes, because that makes a lot more sense for me to look at something. Your computer does not care about you hitting enter or putting in white space or anything like that. It doesn't recognize that. In fact, you have to tell the computer to put in a new line using an HTML element. So what we're doing here is just to make it easy on ourselves to read. So I want to put in basically a title, a header for our site. So, but first, I'm getting ahead of myself. We need to put in the body of our page. And to put in the body, so it's like the body of a document, we need to create a body tag. So again, angle bracket, body, angle bracket, and then close it with a / body within angle brackets. Go back up, and within that, I want to create what's called a header element. And you can create header elements in 6 different flavors, and the whole idea is that they give you the ability to impart semantic meaning to your document. And what that means in actual English is that if you think about reading, say, like a journal article, like a research paper, you'll see the title. That's considered the most important header. So in our case, that's H1. So I'm going to create an H1 element and close it. And then I'm going to add some text. Say this is the title of my website, period. And so that H1 element, where we actually put that text in between the H1 tags, that's our first actual content. Very exciting. So that's pretty cool. So now, when you think about a research paper that you may have written, you not only have the title, you break up that paper into different chapters, subheadings, that sort of a thing. And so after you have the title, let's say you would have probably the introduction. That's where we would use something like H2. So hopefully that makes sense. So we'll put H2, and I'll call that introduction. And so you see, by default, H1 looks like quite a bit bigger in terms of the text size versus the H2. And that is mainly, that's the default for our browser. You can actually make the style change so that an H1 would look smaller than an H2. Not that you would do that, but just understand that we're not so much using the different H1 or H2s, H3s, etc. to make bigger text. You want to do it to get across the structure of your website. So again, thinking in terms of, if we're thinking about this in terms of like a research paper, once we have our title, we have the subheading, our introduction. So now I want to add some content in a paragraph. And a paragraph element is good old P. So I'm just going to put P there. And instead of making up a whole bunch of text, I like to use something that's called the Lorem Ipsum generator. And if you've ever done design or any sort of text or any sort of design work, you've used Lorem Ipsum because it's basically a way to generate a bunch of text without having to tax your brain to come up with it. So I just Google Lorem Ipsum, and what you can do is just, you can just steal any text from anywhere, it doesn't matter. So I pasted that in. Go back to full screen here. So here you can see I've got at the top the title of your website. That's this here. There's your subheading, your introduction, and then the first paragraph follows that. So you see that's without all the bells and whistles, that's pretty similar to almost any website you've probably seen. Now things get much fancier than that, obviously, but that's really sort of the crux of what we're getting at. So I'm going to now just copy that entire paragraph element, including the tags, and paste it below, because I want to show you when you have 2 paragraphs, it looks very similar to how paragraphs look in an actual, like in a Word document. you would have paragraph 1, paragraph 2, and that's pretty cool. Okay, so far this is not too groundbreaking, nothing shocking here. But what I want to introduce next is sort of what makes the World Wide Web itself. It's what makes the World Wide Web special, and that's the ability to link from one page to another or to different sections of a particular web page. So the way we do that is using an anchor element, and the anchor element is just A. So what I want to do is create another paragraph and within that I want to say here's a link to Google, but then around the word Google I want to create an anchor so there you see we've got our paragraph. It says here's a link to Google, and then around the word Google I have an anchor that I've created. Now just having an anchor by itself does absolutely nothing, and you can see that is the case. It's done absolutely nothing. What we need to provide is a way, is where we want that link to go to. And so what we use is called an HTML attribute, and that's where you provide information about whatever element you're creating. So in this case, for the anchor element, we create an attribute called href, H-R-E-F, and you can see I created that within, I don't know if everyone can see that, but within the anchor opening tag. So after the A, there's a space, href, and then I'll say equals, and then surrounded by quotation marks, you can use single, you can use double, https://www.google.com. So by creating this HTML attribute within the anchor element, we've said, I want you to take whatever is inside this anchor element, which is the word Google, and I want you to make that a link, and when someone clicks that link, it will take them to google.com. And if you hold down the control key and click on your link down there, you will see there's our link to google.com. Isn't that exciting? Now the reason that I held down control before I clicked on the link is that normally if I click that link, by default it would go to google.com and take me away from our code pen. And this is true in a lot of sites, and it can be very annoying when you're in the middle of something, if you're reading an article, if you're looking at whatever, and you see, oh, that's an interesting link, I want to see that, but you want to finish what you're looking at first, 99.9% of the time. So you can actually change the behavior so that when someone just clicks on the link, if they're not, that was my mind. If you want to change that behavior and you want it to be that if someone who's not in the know, like us, who doesn't know to hold down control to open links in a new tab, you can make it so that when someone clicks on that link, it will open by default in a new tab. Just incredibly exciting stuff. So what I want you to do is add another HTML attribute. So right after the link, I want to put a space, and I'm going to say target equals, and then quotation marks, and then underscore blank. Now that's potentially a little vague, a little mysterious, and that's because we're targeting an aspect of browsers, which is what they refer to a blank tab as underscore blank. But now you see we've set the target. So now if I click, you'll see nothing. I'm not holding the control button. And there you see it's opened it in a new tab. So there you go. Pretty cool stuff. Okay. So is everyone with me as far as that goes? Any questions before I move on to another aspect of the wild world of links? No? Okay. Let's keep going. I want to show you one other really easy thing you can do with linking, but that makes a website potentially far more usable. And you've probably encountered a lot of websites where this would be something that would make their users way happier. And you could probably say, hey, I'll do that for you. Well, after this, you'll be able to tell them I could do that for you for $10,000 or something like that. I don't know. I've never tried it, but I think it would work. But what that is where you've probably been scrolling through a really long page where, I don't know if it's like a list of every county in Oklahoma and then the locations of a particular service or restaurant or whatever. And then you'll see a link that says back to top. And then you click that and it shoots you all the way back to the top of the page. And then you can, click on a different county so you don't have to scroll through, tire out your poor pointer finger scrolling. That's very simple to do, and I want to show you how to do that. So we're going to create a new paragraph, call it back to top. So we're going to create another anchor. This time it'll be around the whole phrase back to top rather than just a single word. You can make anything into an anchor. That's how when you're on a website and you click on a picture and it's like you clicked on a link, that's because they wrapped an image with an anchor tag. So there's back to top. So I'm going to put in another href equals, and this time I'm just going to say £, or hashtag, depending on your generation. And after the £, just put in the word top. So just £, top. And now, if I scroll all the way down and then click back to top, you'll see it just whoop, bounce me right back up there. Now this is the top. That's sort of like that's a built-in option. That's something you can do because every website has a top to the site. But if you wanted to say, I want you to scroll to my introduction, you can do that too. And the way you do that is using another HTML attribute called an ID. So what I'm going to do is show you how you can scroll to a specific place within a page. So here I'm going to go to my introduction, so that H2 element right there, and then I'm going to put in an attribute, call it ID equals, in quotation marks, and we'll say intro. And that can be whatever you want to call it. So now it's intro, and then if I come down here and change where I put £, top, change it to £, intro, and I'll just change that to say back to intro. And now if you click back to intro, you'll see it scrolled us up just to where the introduction is, not to the top of the page. And so that's literally how easy it is to create one of those click to zoom around sorts of things. It's just a question of creating your different elements and then adding IDs to those different elements, and then creating anchors that link to those different elements. That's all there is to it. Pretty awesome. Okay. Now I want to show how do you include images in your site. Now this is pretty fun. So I'm going to go to Giphy, one of my favorite sites. Hopefully there's nothing not safe for school on here. And I'm going to search for David Bowie. My go-to is Like a Boss. So what I'm going to do is, no. So what I'm going to do is go to source and click copy. And so to create an image on your site, you use what's called the IMG tag, short for image. Pretty easy. So just image, and an image tag does not contain any other content in it. So it's pretty basic. It's self-closing. So you don't have to have image and then /image in a closing tag. But you do need to close it, which is why I have the / at the end there. Okay. And the way you actually refer to the image in question is very similar to how we referred to the link in the using the href attribute in the anchor. We'll use the src or source attribute in image. So we'll say src equals, and I'm going to paste that link to my GIF. And there you see, Like a Boss, David Bowie is there for us. So that's how easy it is. It's pretty simple to take an image that's already hosted somewhere online. That's the beauty of today's internet, is that there are sources of images that are all over the place, so you can just go to an image repo, search for whatever you need, grab that link, and embed it in a website. And as long as you are paying attention to copyright and terms of use, you shouldn't be going to someone else's website and just copying the link there, because then you are sending traffic to their server when they probably don't necessarily want it or need it. But something like Giphy, obviously, the reason they exist is for people to find David Bowie GIFs and put them in workshop websites. So that's why I was able to do that quickly. So you're probably wondering, how do you actually go in and change the size of an image? Because you probably have seen websites where you where you look at it and for some reason it blows it up to like 1,000 pixels wide, and it's all pixelated and it looks terrible and just awful. And so how do we avoid that? And that's using our friend CSS, which I alluded to earlier. So the way to do it is to give an ID to your image. So I'm going to say ID equals Bowie. And then over here in our little CSS tab, and I'll zoom down so you can see it change in real. I'm going to do a # Bowie, and then curly brackets, our second favorite form of bracket for today's talk. And then I'm going to say height, colon, and let's say I want to make it just a very tiny little Bowie, just a little thing. So let's say 75 pixels, so 75px, semicolon. And there you see, now we have an appropriately sized David Bowie there in the bottom of our screen. Now, if you wanted to, for some reason, disrupt and you'll notice that the aspect ratio is totally fine. It's been preserved, which means the width has changed to accommodate the new height. If you don't want that to be the case, if you want it to fill exactly, say, 75 pixels by 75 pixels, you'll use width. So let's say 75 pixels, and it looks terrible now, but there are cases where you know and you need your image to occupy an exact amount of space, and that's where you would use both height and width. But for the most part, if you just provide that height, it will auto-size the width to match it. Okay. How much time we got here? Okay. I'll probably go for like 10 more minutes, and then we'll see where that gets us. So I want to show you a few more things. How can you embed something like a YouTube video on your website? And you might think, oh, there's if there's an image tag, there's got to be a video tag. And you'd actually be correct. There is a video tag. But the thing is, with something like YouTube or Vimeo, they have their whole own deal going on so that you can't use the video tag. You use something called an iframe, which doesn't make as much sense. So I'm going to hop over to YouTube real quick. So if you have your own video and you have it hosted on your server, like an MP4 or something like that, you can link to that using the video tag, and it'll work just fine. Or if it's something like the Internet Archive or some other open repository. But for the most part, when we're looking at videos, we're talking YouTube. Oh, I don't know. I'm just going to put...
Writing's not that easy.
Oh, boy. Okay, I'm going to use this white noise video. So if you're on YouTube and you find a video and you would like to include it in your website, what you want it to do is go down to where it says Share, and then this option here where it says Embed, you want to click that, and you see it'll give you all this code right here. And I'm going to Control-C, or just click the copy button to copy that, and then I'm going to jump over, Control-V, and you'll see that right next to our David Bowie, there's our soothing white noise. Put my children to sleep many times. Usually me before them, but that's fine. So that's cool. That's all it takes to embed something from YouTube into your own website. They package up the code, and now you can see that hopefully you maybe have seen that embed code before from different websites, and it may have looked just like gobbledygook. But now here you see there's width, and so then you can actually just adjust it yourself. There's nothing that YouTube does. So let's say we want it to be smaller. So that's a little smaller there. You can change it so that you see it says allow full screen. You can actually just delete that, and that's how places make it so that you can't go into full screen mode in a video, which I don't know why you would do that. It drives me nuts, but that's how you do it. And so it's as easy as that. You can turn off autoplay. all sorts of fun stuff. So you see, so that's embedding from YouTube. You can see that our video is right next to our picture of David Bowie, which is probably not what you're interested in. So if you want to make it so that those two appear on different lines, we'll put a new element, and this is that line break element I was talking about, which is called BR. So this one just looks like that, angle bracket, BR, angle bracket. Put it between the IMG and the iframe, and then scroll down, and there you see, looks much neater and quite splendid. So that goes same for any Vimeo or any other sort of source of videos, or if you say take something from SoundCloud, they give you an iframe as well. And an iframe is a way to basically embed another website within your website. That's what an iframe actually means. So I could actually take, so I'll put another line in here, and I'm going to create an iframe, source equals https://info.library.okstate.edu/map-room. And you can see here, I've just embedded an iframe that links to the map and spatial data website on the library's website. I've just embedded it within our little page here. So that's all an iframe is a way to containerize and embed existing pages within your own page. Now some servers don't allow that. You can imagine that someone could get up to no good hijinks by embedding sites within a different site. So depending on how a server is set up, you may not be able to embed it using an iframe. So in case it doesn't work, that's why. So I'm just going to delete that one there. Okay, a couple more minutes. I want to show you how can you do something a little more kind of fun. So I just want to show you how you can use a button. You know, buttons. So after our YouTube video there, I'm going to put in a BR, and then I'm going to put in an element called button, and then close it. Inside the button, I'm going to say click me. And then if you scroll down, you'll see we've created a button, and it says click me, and you can click it, and nothing happens. So that's not too exciting. But then what you can do is add an HTML attribute called onClick. So I'm going to say onClick equals quotation marks. I'm going to say alert, parentheses, single quotes, you clicked me, and then the semicolon in there. So onClick equals double quotation marks, alert, parentheses, single quotation mark, you clicked me, single quote, parentheses, semicolon, double quotation mark. And so then if you go down and click it, you'll see it says an embedded page says, you clicked me. So if you've ever seen a little annoying pop-up like that, that's using an alert to do it. And that's a very, you don't see it too much in modern websites because it was meant to use for alerting a user rather than creating actual pop-ups or anything like that. but it's a great way for when you're starting to put a site together and you want to say like default behavior goes here. You would use something like an alert just so that people know, or just that you know as you're coding your site that what you have is in fact working. So, what you can also do is create a so I have click function here and then parentheses, and then I'm going to go over, and this will be basically what we end with, and I don't want you to worry about the whole what I'm doing here. So var click function equals function get element by never mind. So what I've done here, and we'll see if this actually works. Yes. So I've actually said, instead of putting the little code within our button, what I've said is on click, I want you to execute something called click function. And then if you look in this JavaScript box over here, I've defined something called click function using a variable, and then I've defined that variable behavior here. And I'm going to say I want to take, actually, I'm going to add an ID. So there you see, now I've said, after saying hi, we're going to create another variable. Let me hide the CSS here. There we go. So I've created another variable called body, and I've said document get element by ID. So that's how you find different, that's another use for these IDs that I mentioned before. You can use JavaScript to figure out what you're talking about and do different things. So I'm going to say body, and then body.style.color equals red. No, not color. It's background color. And we'll see. So now, if we try clicking, now you see when you clicked on the button, it's actually taken the background, our body element, and it said, I want you to change the background color to red when someone clicks that. So, not the most demonstrative example, but that's a sign of what you can do when you get into the world of CSS. So that's just an example of what's possible. So that's, here's what we've created today. So you'll remember way back when I first started talking, we talked about creating the title using the H1. We've got the HTML element, the body element. We've got our H1, our H2, our paragraphs. Then we created links, how you link to Google, how you link to different sections within your website. How do you embed images? How do you embed videos? How do you create a button? How do you do things with that button? How do you wire it up with the rest of your site? And so that's all I want to talk about right now. One last thing I will show you is just what you can do, and just as a tiny amount of self-promotion. You're stuck with me, so I'm going to go for it. If you go to our site, we've got this thing called Still Water from the Air. And this is a site that we made that lets you look at how still water has changed over the years using historical aerial photographs from our collection. So here you can see this is still water back in 1938. So there you can see is Whitehurst, and you can see Willard was not there. The library is nowhere to be seen. And then we can go over to current day, and it'll throw it up right next, side by side. Yep, and then map-room, and then you'll see Still Water from the Air over there on the side. And so, so you can actually click up to 8 different years within this little interface here, and you can see as I scroll around, it keeps them synced up as you zoom in, so you can see the library. The rooftop, at least, has changed quite a bit from 1969 till today, and definitely from 1938. So you can do that. And you can see we have, let me turn off a couple of these here. We have a few maps on here, too, so you can actually see. Some of you may be familiar with Babcock Park on the southwest side of town. You can see, even though it's misspelled, you can see there was a landholder named C.F. Babcock who used to own all of this land where the park is now. So that's cool. That's also where I live, so that's always my go-to example. But this is something I hand-coded myself. It's something like this is all cool things are possible, and this is where you can really, so you can dive in, and you can rely on a lot of work that other people have done. That's the beauty of working with the internet, is that all of these things are freely available, more or less, and they're encouraged for you to use. And so this is using technology that's been made public by Facebook and a few other companies to make it possible. So that's it. I just wanted to show you that kind of fun thing. And I'd be happy to take any questions that anyone might have.
All right, well, thank you all for coming. If you want to know more about the program, equipment available here in the library, I really encourage you to visit with the knowledgeable staff in the Edmund Lowe Creative Studios. It's in room 105. Or you can check out one of our logins for LinkedIn Learning. They offer thousands of online courses. So our next program is Premiere for Posterity. It will be in here on April 2nd, and we hope you all can join us. We'll be giving away a GoPro Hero 7 Silver, so be here for a chance to win. I also want to mention the Library Creativity Award, which we're now taking applications for. All OSU students have a chance to showcase their creativity in a number of categories. You can win up to $1,000, or we also have 4 $300 awards. Just about anything can be submitted, so visit our website or ask any of the event staff here if you'd like to know more. And be sure to apply by April 8th. Right now we're going to say goodbye to our live audience. Before we draw for prizes, thank you to our best friends at O-State TV for hosting today's live stream, and goodbye to everyone online with us today. All right, and now we're going to go ahead and draw for prizes.